Tuesday Springfield City Council meeting last week gave us interesting conversation about using some taxpayer funds to grant an organization that ultimately helps train individuals in the space of construction. And the individual behind that request was Calvin Pitts with Southtown Construction Training Center. And the last time I was at the Southtown Construction Training Center, I was impressed. And kind of made me want to get into the field and to go and get training done at this facility, because just the way they had these diagrams set up, it showed the gutty works of a wall, but kind of a clear plexiglass thing over it, so you could really see how things had to be built internally to make for an electric junction box or a fan or a light, and just all the elements that are involved there. And for anybody who's tried building something, I'm trying to do that myself at home. I'm quickly realizing I should probably hire a professional. So let's talk to the professionals here this morning. Calvin Pitts joining us here on Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. Calvin, thanks for taking time with us this morning. And let's get right into it here. You went to the Springfield City Council last week. Tell us about the request and what you were looking for.
Yeah, well, so good morning, Greg, and thank you for allowing me on, man. I was basically looking for support. I've been in my training I've been training since 2013 here at Southtown Construction Training Center. We've had great results. So we were hoping that an ordinance that was passed or a vote, they had voted to give us some money a few months back, and we just brought it up front so that we could get things going. And I was really surprised that it didn't pass.
Well, and there were some, various things that kind of came up, somewhat surprising to others that it would even be been an issue. But some issues like allegations of not paying into a union fund and a variety of other questions that were raised. The request was for how much? Let's first touch on that.
Yeah, so the request was for $400,000, and that was to rehabilitate 3 homes that we have here in Springfield that is currently unoccupied and will, be dilapidated and torn down if someone don't do something with them. And so that 400, it also included, the training, the administration, all of the personal protection equipment that each student was going to need. It included a $15 stipend for each of the students. So, it wasn't very much money considering what was going to, what we were going to get out of it.
And how many people would have been trained with this if the city council were to approve it?
Yeah, we were going to train either 20 students for 20 hours a week or 10 students for 40 hours a week. And with the way that the COVID thing is going and the space that I have now, I think that it would probably be wiser to use the 10 students at 40 hours and for 5 months to, get some things done.
Well, and you got to think about, it's one thing to read a book about construction. Calvin, you're in the business. Yeah. It's totally different. The book learning versus the real world actually getting involved in it. So talk about, I guess, if you don't get these funds eventually, how important is it that this type of training, this type of mentorship, this type of real world experience happen for members of the community here in Springfield?
Yeah, Greg, it's very important. That's why I was saddened by the vote that council took last week. We have individuals in our community, and I stated that my participants in the training will need, and that's not all of them. We have some polished individuals that come through the training that just need a hand to that next step. But most of our individuals, they need those essential skills. They need, to learn how to give some self-care, along with some of the basic, skills and knowledge that we give those guys. Reading the tape measure, those are things that I take for granted, but a lot of people don't read the tape measure. So we need to come up with, ways that we can get these guys familiar with the tape measure, because that's going to be necessary regardless of what trade you get in. And our community, you can look at the demographic. You can ride over on the east side and you can see, the need for somebody to come in and to give these guys a hand. I grew up over there. I know where they are. I can feel them. And I know that with someone spending that time with me and giving me the knowledge, and encouragement, to let me know that what, man, you can do this. I know how important that is for our community and the people in it.
We're talking with Calvin Pitts with Southtown Construction Training Center here on WMAY, Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop at about 8:49. Calvin, what's different from your program versus maybe what people could get at LLCC or any other training program there may be in Central Illinois?
Yeah, Bishop, I was asked that question in council, and I'm really careful about that because one thing that I don't want to do, as a Black business owner, I want to make sure that they understand that I see that next owner as a potential partner, not a competitor, because it's going to be really important for all of us to work together and do this thing. But, my training is set aside because when, I welcome any brother or sister that is wanting to do things different. I don't focus on where you've been. My focus is where do you want to go from here? So like the minimum requirements, I moved those things out of the way because I've seen individuals that didn't have those minimum requirements, but putting an implementation plan in place and working and encouraging those individuals, giving them the avenues that's necessary to get these things taken care of. I've seen that happen, and I've seen men grow. So I want to be able to be that avenue for that person that, maybe stopped a little soon, but need to get these things back in place, and somebody needs to help, Right now, everything is, you have to be perfect. You have to have this, in order for that Black man to get in. There are so many things that are in place, and it's almost discouraging at some points, And so I want to remove those barriers and those obstacles that'll prevent them from growing. And those are, the things that my training offer that they don't, as well as that, that person, I walk them through our training. They're with me that 5 months. They're talking to a guy that look like they do, that comes from a community that they're in. And I'm going to be able to share some of the things that you're going to have to be tough about, because you're going to experience some discrimination. You're going to experience some of those things. And not only in the construction industry, anywhere you go as a Black man, so we're going to have to be able to, I teach them to be goal-oriented, set some things in front of you, and then you won't be easily moved, because growth is the key. So I want to make sure that I, give individuals that. And those are just some of the things that we do here at Southtown. We've paid for the individual to take the test and to take the driver's test and, the whatever the upfront cost is. We pay for individuals to get glasses because I can see that you don't have 20/20 vision on the job site. Those are things that we'll notice and we'll remove those obstacles, and no one else is doing that, so. And I can go on and on.
Well, and we'll definitely want to talk about this in the future and see if the city council revisits this because it could be filed in a new ordinance altogether. So we'll see exactly how this plays out. Calvin Pitts with Southtown Construction Training Center. It's all the time we've got. We're going to have to connect again soon just to talk about the need that there is. Not just for some, sections of the community to get into the construction trades, but just the need there is with the construction trades, period. Because I'm hearing from other contractors, Calvin, and I'm sure you could probably reiterate this. There's a lack of workers out there, and that's also helping drive prices up, even just for simple handyman work. So maybe we connect and talk more about that in the future, all right?
Absolutely. I look forward to it, Greg. There's a bunch of money out there, and I think that we definitely need to be able to get guys prepared so that we can experience some of the vacationing and, career opportunities that others do.
Calvin Pitts, greatly appreciate it. We'll talk again soon. Be safe out there.
Thanks, Bishop. Have a good day.
It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop at 8:53 from Culver's West on Wabash.
Butterburgers and fresh frozen custard, handcrafted for you daily at Culver's West on Wabash.